The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chambers had never witnessed such chaos. Hundreds of alien representatives from across the galaxy filled the circular amphitheater, their various forms creating a symphony of panic. Tentacled beings waved their appendages frantically while insectoid creatures clicked their mandibles in distress. The air itself seemed to vibrate with fear. At the center of it all, the holographic display painted a picture of horror. Star systems that had glowed bright blue just days ago now showed as dead black voids. The tactical map resembled a spreading infection, darkness consuming world after world along the outer rim territories. Council Representative Vexstar stood at his podium, all four of his compound eyes tracking the disaster unfolding before them. His scaled hands trembled as he manipulated the display controls, zooming in on the latest casualty reports. The Kepler Mining Consortium gone. The agricultural worlds of Theta Proxima silent. 17 entire star systems had vanished from the galactic communication network in just 10 standard days. The nightmare has begun again, whispered Ambassador Zilkith from the insectoid hive worlds, her translator crackling with static from her agitation. The old stories were true. The Devourers have returned. Prime Chancellor Kethmori rose from her ornate crystalline throne, her translucent form catching the light from the display. When she spoke, her voice resonated through the chamber like singing crystal, commanding immediate attention from every being present. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, her tone grave despite its musical quality. "What we feared most has come to pass. The ancient enemy sleeps no more. The Devourers have awakened from their 1,000-year slumber, and they hunger once again." A collective shudder ran through the assembly. Even the youngest species knew the legends of the Devourers. Biomechanical monstrosities that had once consumed entire sectors of the galaxy, before mysteriously vanishing into the deep void. Most had assumed they were myths, cautionary tales told to keep ambitious civilizations from venturing too far into uncharted space. The Chancellor gestured to the tactical display, highlighting the latest intelligence reports. Our scout ships have confirmed the worst. Their bioships have evolved during their hibernation. They regenerate battle damage within minutes. Their weapons seem to feed on the energy of our shields, growing stronger with each attack. Most terrifying of all, they appear to learn from each encounter, adapting their tactics in real time. Fleet Admiral Corrin of the militaristic hegemony stood up, his massive armored form dwarfing those around him. "My fleets engaged them at Rigel Station," he announced, his voice heavy with defeat. "We brought our finest dreadnoughts, our most experienced crews. The battle lasted less than an hour. 300 vessels, only 12 escaped to tell the tale." The chamber erupted in worried chatter. If the mighty hegemony fleet couldn't stand against the Devourers, what hope did anyone have? Chancellor Kethmori raised her hand for silence. "The mathematics are clear. At their current rate of expansion, they will reach the core worlds within 6 months. Our combined fleets, even working together, lack the firepower to stop them. We must seek help from every spacefaring civilization in the galaxy." "Activate the emergency beacon," she commanded. "Broadcast on all frequencies, in every known language. Tell them the ancient enemy has returned. Tell them we need immediate military assistance, or we all face extinction." The great beacon atop the council spire came to life, sending its desperate message across thousands of light years. The transmission was unprecedented. Never before had the proud Galactic Council openly begged for help from outside civilizations. Days crawled by with agonizing slowness. The first responses were predictably disappointing. The Hegemony High Command sent regrets, claiming their remaining fleets were needed to defend their homeworlds. The warrior clans of Talver offered only a token force of 50 ships, barely enough to patrol a single system, let alone mount a meaningful offensive. Most species simply ignored the plea entirely. The isolated crystalline confederacy went silent, presumably preparing their own defenses. The nomadic trader fleets scattered to the galactic edges, hoping to wait out the storm in deep space. As hope began to fade, something unexpected happened. A transmission arrived from Sol System, a small, unremarkable star system on the very edge of civilized space. The humans who lived there were considered barely worthy of council notice. primitive species that had only achieved faster than light. Travel within the last century. The holographic display shimmered as the transmission played. A human male appeared, his dark hair neatly trimmed, and his military uniform crisp and professional. His eyes held a steely determination that seemed oddly out of place for a representative of such a young civilization. "This is Admiral Kim Dae-ho, of the Earth Defense Force," the human said, his voice calm and measured despite the galaxy-wide crisis. "We have received your distress call regarding the Devourer threat. Earth has voted unanimously to provide military assistance." Council members began murmuring among themselves. Earth's military was thought to consist of perhaps a dozen crewed vessels, barely capable of interplanetary travel, let alone interstellar warfare. Admiral Kim continued, seemingly unaware of the dismissive attitude his offer was receiving. "Our warfleet is already mobilizing and will depart within the hour. We estimate arrival at the Zellar system in 72 hours. To all Council forces, hold your positions. Help is on the way." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Several representatives actually began laughing, though their mirth held more hysteria than humor. "Warfleet," scoffed Ambassador the Quay Reef Worlds. "Those primitives probably consider a cargo hauler with mining lasers to be a warship." But Chancellor Kethmori studied the transmission replay with growing curiosity. Something in the human admiral's eyes suggested there was more to Earth's military capabilities than their public records indicated. In a galaxy full of desperate possibilities, even the smallest hope was worth grasping. "Alert all remaining forces," she commanded. "Prepare to rendezvous with Earth's fleet at Zellery. Whatever they're bringing, we'll need every ship we can get." Of them could have imagined that this response from an obscure human admiral would change the course of galactic history forever. The edge of Zellari. Space had been eerily quiet for 3 days. Council ships maintained their defensive positions around the dying colony world, their crews watching long-range sensors for any sign of the promised human reinforcements. Most alien commanders had written off Earth's offer as the desperate, boasting of a primitive species. Then the universe itself seemed to tear open. The first sign wasn't visual. It was the massive gravitational distortion that sent every sensor array in the system screaming warnings. Space itself began to ripple and bend as something enormous prepared to emerge from hyperspace. The distortion was unlike anything the assembled alien fleets had ever witnessed. Commander Veltara, of the Council reconnaissance vessel, Starwind, was the first to spot the anomaly. Her 6 arms danced across her control panel as readings flooded her screens. "By the ancient stars?" she whispered, her translator struggling with her native language's expression of shock. "The hyperspace signature is massive. Whatever's coming through is bigger than our entire fleet combined." What emerged from the swirling vortex of bent spacetime defied every assumption the galaxy had made about human civilization. The first ships to materialize were sleek destroyers, their angular hulls gleaming like polished obsidian. But these weren't the crude vessels Council intelligence had described. These were warships that looked like they'd been forged from liquid metal and hardened starlight. Then came the cruisers, each one bristling with weapon systems that made veteran alien commanders do double takes at their scanner readings. Signatures unlike anything in galactic databases. Whole materials that seemed to absorb sensor beams rather than reflect them. These weren't just advanced ships, they were revolutionary. But nothing had prepared the watching aliens for what came. Next, the dreadnoughts emerged like mechanical gods of war. Each one was a floating fortress nearly 2 kilometers long, their hulls studded with launch bays, weapon ports, and shield generators that hummed with barely contained power. The largest of them all materialized at the center of the formation, its hull bearing Korean characters that translated to Soul's might. Captain Zaroth, of the hegemony battlecruiser Iron Talon, had fought in 100 wars across 50 systems. His 4 eyes had seen every type of warship the galaxy had to offer. But as he watched the human fleet continue to emerge from hyperspace, his mandibles clicked in disbelief. "Keep counting," he ordered his tactical officer, his voice strained with shock. "Sir, I've counted over 1,000 vessels and they're still coming," the younger officer reported, his voice cracking with amazement. Destroyers, cruisers, dreadnoughts, and those massive carrier ships. Each carrier is deploying what appears to be hundreds of fighter craft. The carriers were perhaps the most impressive sight of all. Each one was the size of a small moon, their launch bays glowing with the blue light of contained energy fields. As the watching aliens stared, these massive vessels began disgorging fighter wings by the hundreds. The small craft moved with mechanical precision that spoke of advanced artificial intelligence or incredibly disciplined pilots. Aboard the Soul's Might, Admiral Kim Dae-ho stood in his command center surrounded by holographic displays showing the complete tactical situation. His bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, their movements precise and practiced. This wasn't their first major operation. Commander Park Hyjin, his tactical officer, coordinated the fleet's deployment from her station. Her fingers danced across haptic controls as she organized nearly 4,000 vessels into combat formation. Admiral, all ships report ready for action. Fleet total stands at 3,847 vessels, with full fighter complement deployed. The numbers were staggering. In 3 days, humanity had assembled a war fleet larger than most species could field in 3 years. The implications sent shockwaves through every alien commander watching the display. Captain Lee Min-ho approached from the reconnaissance station, his expression carefully neutral despite the magnitude of what they'd accomplished. Sir Council, forces are requesting clarification on our fleet composition. They're having trouble believing their sensor readings. Kim almost smiled at that. I imagine they are. For 70 years, we've allowed the galaxy to see only our civilian merchant vessels and a handful of patrol ships. We learned early that appearing weak prevents others from viewing us as a threat. Lieutenant Nam So-young looked up from her communications console, her young face serious, despite her excitement at being part of such a historic moment. Admiral, I'm intercepting Devourer communications. They're massing near Zalari Prime. Current count shows approximately 8,000. Bioships in various configurations. The bridge fell silent for a moment. 8,000 enemy vessels against their nearly 4,000. Odds that would give any reasonable commander pause. Kim studied the tactical display, his weathered features showing no concern whatsoever. Excellent odds, he said calmly, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who had planned for exactly this scenario. The comment caused visible confusion among the council observers monitoring their communications. How could any commander consider being outnumbered 2-1 as excellent odds? Communications Officer Nam So-young opened a channel to the entire human fleet. All ships, this is Soul's Might. Admiral Kim Dae-ho, commanding. Kim's voice carried across the void to every human vessel in the formation. Today, we face an ancient enemy that has terrorized the galaxy for millennia. They believe themselves superior because of their numbers and their biotechnology. They are about to learn why Earth spent centuries perfecting the art of war. He paused, letting his words sink in across the fleet. Signal all units. Advance to combat formation. Launch all fighters. Charge main weapons. Today, we show the galaxy what humans do when innocent lives hang in the balance. The human fleet began to move forward as one, their formation shifting from a defensive posture to an aggressive attack formation that made alien observers gasp in recognition. These weren't primitive warriors stumbling into their first space battle. These were professional soldiers executing a plan they'd drilled countless times. As the massive armada advanced toward Zalari Prime, every alien in the system realized the same terrifying truth: humanity had been hiding their true military capabilities for decades. The question now was whether even this incredible display of force would be enough to stop the ancient nightmare that was the Devourer fleet. The galaxy was about to find out what humans were really capable of when pushed to the edge. The sight that emerged from the dark void beyond Zalari Prime would have driven lesser species to madness. The Devourer fleet moved like a living nightmare, their bioships pulsing with sickly green and purple lights that seemed to breathe with malevolent life. Each vessel was a grotesque masterpiece of organic horror, part machine, part creature. All Predator. The smallest bioships resembled massive jellyfish with metallic tentacles that sparked with bioelectric energy. Their translucent bodies revealed pulsing organs and flowing fluids that glowed with an inner light. The medium-sized vessels looked like enormous sea creatures crossed with warships, their hulls covered in what appeared to be scales that shifted and moved independently, but it was the massive command ships that truly inspired terror. These behemoths resembled nothing so much as flying cathedrals of flesh and bone, their surfaces crawling with smaller organisms that served as living weapons systems. Countless eyes dotted their hulls, each one tracking potential prey with ancient intelligence. Captain Nixstar of the Council Observation. The vessel had seen recordings of the legendary Devourers, but nothing had prepared him for the reality. By all the sacred moons, he whispered, his translator barely managing to convey his horror. They're even worse than the old stories described. The bioships moved in perfect coordination, their bioluminescent patterns creating a hypnotic display that had mesmerized countless civilizations before their destruction. As they approached the human fleet, the patterns seemed to pulse faster, like a predator's heartbeat accelerating before a kill. Admiral Kim stood motionless in the command center of Soul's Might, watching the approaching nightmare with the calm focus of a master strategist. His crew moved around him with practiced efficiency, their faces showing determination rather than fear. This was the moment they'd trained for their entire careers. "Admiral, the bioships are assuming attack formation," reported Commander Park Hae-jin, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they faced. Long-range sensors show they're beginning to glow brighter. Intelligence suggests this indicates they're preparing to feed. Kim nodded grimly. The Devourer's feeding process was legendary. They would drain the life force from both ships and crew, adding the consumed energy to their own power reserves. It was how they had grown so strong over the millennia. "Signaled the fleet," Kim commanded. "Assume formation, Delta 7. It looked like a standard defensive wall." The human ships repositioned themselves in what appeared to be a classic defensive formation that any military academy student would recognize. To the watching council forces, it looked like humanity was preparing for a desperate last stand. The Devourers saw exactly what Kim wanted them to see: another primitive species arranging themselves for easy harvesting. The ancient enemy had faced this scenario thousands of times across the galaxy. Young civilizations would form defensive lines, fight bravely for a few hours, then be systematically consumed. The bioships accelerated toward the human formation, their organic hulls beginning to split open to reveal feeding appendages that writhed with hungry anticipation. Smaller attack organisms launched from the larger vessels, swarming toward the human ships like a plague of living missiles. "Range to target, 50,000 kilometers in closing," reported Lieutenant Nam So-young from her sensor station. "Are deploying attack organisms. They're coming in fast." Kim watched the tactical display with the patience of a hunter who had laid the perfect trap. "Weapons free, all units. Execute attack pattern Omega." The single word fire had never carried such weight. The human fleet exploded into action with a violence that defied description. Every ship opened fire simultaneously, turning the void between the fleets into a storm of destructive energy. Plasma cannons that had been developed from humanity's nuclear warfare. Research sent streams of superheated matter tearing through bioship hulls. The organic armor that had protected the Devourers for millennia simply evaporated under the assault. But it was the kinetic weapons that truly shocked the watching aliens. Human railguns accelerated projectiles to significant fractions of light speed, punching through entire formations of bioships like they were made of paper. The impact explosions sent shockwaves rippling through the Devourer fleet. Captain Cho Sung-min commanded the destroyer Bisons Fury as it led a squadron of similar vessels directly into the heart of the enemy formation. His ship's hull gleamed with fresh battle scars as bioelectric tentacles lashed out at them, only to be severed by focused plasma beams. "These things heal too fast," he reported over the comm system as his weapons tore into a medium-sized bioship. "Every hole we punch gets sealed within minutes. We need a new approach." "Copy that." Vison's Fury, came the reply from Fleet Command. You are authorized for Protocol 7. Show them what human creativity looks like. Protocol 7 represented everything that made human warfare unique in the galaxy. Instead of trying to destroy the bioships through conventional means, the human weapons began deploying something far more insidious. Modified nanites, microscopic. Robots designed to infiltrate the bioships' organic systems and turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. The nanites worked by hijacking the bioships' regenerative processes, causing them to regenerate incorrectly. Hull breaches would heal with gaps. Weapon systems would grow additional components that interfered with their function. Most horrifically, the bioships began to consume their own organic components, effectively eating themselves from within. Major Han Ji-woo led her fighter squadron through the chaos like a dancer moving through a thunderstorm. Her modified interceptor was barely 30 meters long. It carried enough firepower to threaten vessels 1,000 times its size. Her target was the neural nodes that controlled devourer formations, organic brain centers that coordinated their attacks. Phoenix leader to all fighters, she transmitted as her squadron weaved between massive bioships. Target the control nodes. They're the glowing clusters near the center of each vessel. Take them out, and the whole ship goes brain-dead. Her fighters moved with inhuman precision, their pilots enhanced with neural interfaces that allowed them to react faster than any organic brain could process. They darted between writhing tentacles and bioelectric discharges, their weapons finding targets with surgical accuracy. The effect was immediate and devastating. As the neural nodes were destroyed, entire sections of the Devourer fleet lost coordination. Bioships began firing on their own allies, their damaged control systems unable to distinguish friend from foe. Command, this is Phoenix leader Han. Gi-woo reported as she watched a massive bioship literally tear itself apart in confusion. We're seeing panic responses throughout their fleet. They've never faced an enemy that adapts faster than they do. The battle raged for 18 brutal hours. The void around Zalari Prime became a graveyard of organic debris and twisted metal. Bioships that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia found themselves outmatched by human ingenuity and ruthless tactical innovation. When the firing finally stopped, the impossible had happened. The Devourer fleet, what remained of it, was retreating. Ships that had never known defeat were fleeing back into the dark void, their bioluminescent patterns now flickering with what could only be described as fear. Admiral Kim surveyed the battlefield from Seoul's Might's command center, his expression unchanged despite having achieved what many considered impossible. Around him, his crew worked to compile damage reports and casualty lists. Signal the Council observers, he commanded. Inform them that Phase 1 is complete. The immediate threat to Zalari Prime has been neutralized. Commander Park Hae-jin looked up from her tactical display, her face showing the first signs of emotion since the battle began. Admiral, our losses were lighter than projected. We've proven human weapons can hurt them. Kim nodded, but his expression remained grim. This was just the beginning. We've shown them we can fight, but now they know we exist. The real war starts now. He turned to face the main display, where long-range sensors were already tracking the retreating Devourer forces. Signal the fleet. Begin preparations for counter-offensive operations. Today we defended one world. Tomorrow we take the fight. To them, the galaxy had witnessed something unprecedented. The ancient nightmare had been bloodied and forced to retreat. For the first time in recorded history, there was hope that the Devourers could be defeated, and humanity was just getting started. The weeks following the Battle of Zalari Prime transformed the galaxy's understanding of warfare forever. While alien civilizations had spent millennia developing honorable combat doctrines and predictable strategies, humanity unleashed something far more. It's terrifying, organized chaos backed by ruthless intelligence. Commander Yoon. Taehan's Special Operations Team had done the impossible. They had successfully infiltrated a damaged Devourer bioship during the confusion of battle, fighting their way through corridors that pulsed like living arteries. The ship's interior was a nightmare of organic technology, walls that breathed, floors that shifted underfoot, and ceiling-mounted sensory organs that tracked their every movement. "This is insane," whispered Sergeant Kim Hae-won as they moved deeper into the bioship's neural center. "The whole ship is alive. The walls are watching us." Yoon kept his team focused on their mission, leading them through the maze of organic corridors with grim determination. Their objective was the central neural hub, a massive brain-like structure that controlled the ship's functions. Getting there meant fighting through immune system responses that manifested as living weapons. "Contact front," called out Corporal Park Jimin, as tendrils erupted from the walls, each one tipped with bioelectric stingers. The team's weapons, specially modified for organic targets, sent bursts of energy that severed the attacking appendages. When they finally reached the neural center, Yoon's team found themselves facing a pulsing mass of brain tissue the size of a small building. Bioelectric patterns flowed across its surface like living lightning, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with alien thoughts. Deploying neural interface, Yoon announced, connecting his team's portable computer systems to the bioship's central nervous system. What they discovered changed everything. The Devourer ships weren't just alive, they were intelligent. Each vessel was essentially a massive creature with its own consciousness, controlled by a central brain that processed information faster than any computer. But like any brain, it could be hacked. "Oh, we've done it," Yoon reported over the secure channel. "We've cracked their neural control systems. These ships think they're fighting their own kind when we alter their sensory input, can turn their own vessels against them." What followed was psychological warfare on a scale that made even veteran council observers question human sanity. Using the neural interface codes, human technicians began infecting Devourer bioships with false information. Would suddenly perceive their own fleet as enemies. Opening fire on ships they had fought alongside for centuries. The first time it happened, council observers thought it was a malfunction. A massive Devourer command ship suddenly turned its weapons on its own escorts, tearing them apart with bioelectric beams while the crew frantically tried to understand what was happening. Captain Jang Yoon witnessed the chaos from the bridge of her modified cruiser, the Soul Predator. Her ship was itself a testament to human adaptability. Its hull had been grafted with captured biotechnology, creating a hybrid vessel that combined human engineering with alien organic systems. "They're tearing each other apart," her tactical officer reported with barely concealed amazement. "The infected ship believes it's surrounded by enemies." Jang watched the carnage through her ship's bio-optical sensors, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and unease. Her vessel's organic components were feeding information directly into her nervous system, allowing her to perceive the battle in ways no purely technological ship could match. "Signal the fleet," she commanded. "Out. They expect us to fight like civilized beings following rules of engagement and codes of honor. They're about to learn that humans are the galaxy's most uncivilized predators when innocent lives are at stake." The human fleet had evolved beyond recognition in just a few weeks. Ships that had once relied purely on conventional weapons now sprouted organic modifications that made them faster, deadlier, and more adaptable. Human engineers worked around the clock, grafting captured biotechnology onto their vessels and improving it with human innovation. But it was the kamikaze tactics that truly horrified galactic observers. The automated drone ships controlled by advanced artificial intelligence would pack themselves with antimatter charges and fly directly into Devourer formations. The explosions were devastating, but more importantly, they created opportunities for the main fleet to exploit. Lieutenant Delinta, Commander Oh Seung-kwa, piloted one of the suicide drones during a major engagement near the Vega system. Her consciousness was uploaded into the drone's AI core, allowing her to make split-second decisions that no pre-programmed system could match. "This is Reaper 7, she transmitted as her drone ship accelerated toward a cluster of bioships. "APA clear. Run at their command vessel. Detonating in 3.2.1. The antimatter explosion tore a hole in space itself, vaporizing the Devourer command ship and damaging dozens of nearby vessels. Oh's sacrifice allowed the main human fleet to punch through the enemy formation and achieve their tactical objectives. What disturbed Council observers most was humanity's terrifying learning curve. Within days of first contact, Human engineers had not only reverse-engineered Devourer biotechnology, but had begun improving upon it. Their weapons adapted faster than the ancient enemy could develop countermeasures. Dr. Choi Min-jen led the rapid development team aboard the research vessel New Horizon. His laboratory was a chaotic mix of human technology and captured alien organisms, where teams of scientists worked to understand and exploit every aspect of Devourer biology. Identified the genetic markers that control their regeneration, he reported during a briefing with Admiral Kim. By modifying the nanites, we can actually accelerate their healing process until it becomes destructive. They'll literally heal themselves to death. The implications were staggering. In just weeks, humanity had not only learned to fight the Devourers, but had begun turning their own biological advantages against them. A delegation of council representatives requested a meeting with Admiral Kim, hoping to understand how humanity had achieved such rapid tactical evolution. The meeting took place aboard Sol's Might, in a conference room that now featured both human technology and integrated biosystems. Admiral Kim began Ambassador Valterra, her 6 arms gesturing nervously. We must understand. How have you achieved such rapid adaptation? Your species has been in space for less than a century, yet you fight like you've been planning this war for millennia. Kim's weathered face showed no emotion as he studied the assembled alien representatives. You see madness in our methods. You see opportunity. You fight with honor and predictable strategies, because you've never faced an enemy that required total war. He gestured to a holographic display showing human military history. Humanity spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing other humans. We learned to fight in every environment, with every weapon, using every possible advantage. We studied the psychology of our enemies and learned to exploit their weaknesses. The display showed scenes from human conflicts throughout history: ancient battles, world wars, guerrilla campaigns, and cyber warfare. Each conflict had taught humanity new lessons about the nature of war itself. Against the Devourers, we're simply applying lessons learned from our bloodiest teachers ourselves. Kim continued. We know that honor is a luxury you can only afford when you're winning. When extinction is the alternative, you use every weapon at your disposal. The council delegation sat in stunned silence, finally understanding the true nature of humanity's military philosophy. They had assumed humans were barbaric because they fought without honor. In reality, they were the most sophisticated military force in the galaxy, precisely because they had learned to fight without limitations. Made one critical mistake, Kim concluded. They assumed we would fight like every other species they've encountered. They expected us to follow the same patterns, use the same strategies, and make the same mistakes. Instead, they're facing an enemy that treats war as a science to be perfected, rather than a ritual to be performed. As the delegation left the meeting, each representative carried the same terrifying realization. Humanity hadn't just learned to fight the Devourers. They had learned to think like them, fight like them, and ultimately, to be more adaptable than they were. The galaxy was witnessing the birth of a new apex predator, and it wore a human face. The Devourer homeworld hung in space like a festering wound against the stars. The massive planet pulsed with sickly, bioluminescent veins that could be seen from orbit. Its surface crawling with organic factories that had been spawning terror for millions of years. Around it floated countless bioship nurseries, living stations, where new vessels were grown from the genetic material of consumed civilizations. Admiral Kim stood in the command center of Sol's Might, his weathered face reflecting the glow of tactical displays that showed the impossible odds they faced. The human fleet had been reduced to just over 1,500 vessels during the long campaign across the galaxy. Battle damage, casualties, and the sheer exhaustion of months of continuous warfare had taken their toll, but what awaited them here was far worse than anything they had faced before. The entire Devourer species had gathered to defend their homeworld. IO ships of every size and configuration filled the space around the planet like a living asteroid field.
Ow.
The smallest were the size of human destroyers, while the largest command vessels dwarfed anything in the known galaxy. Final count, Admiral, reported Commander Park Hyjin, her voice tight with strain. Sensors detect over 50,000 bioships in defensive positions. They've called back every vessel from across the galaxy. Kim nodded grimly. Even humanity's most optimistic battle plans had never accounted for odds this extreme. Conventional warfare would be suicide. Conventional warfare had never been humanity's strongest advantage. Colonel Bay and Ho Kim called to his chief engineer. Status report on Operation Ragnarok. Colonel Bay looked up from his engineering station, his face pale but determined. The stellar engineering report spread across his screens would have driven any sane military commander to despair. Sir, the stellar collapse charges are in position. 47 ships have volunteered for the placement mission. All vessels report ready for Operation Ragnarok. The plan was beyond audacious. It bordered on impossible. We human scientists had calculated that by placing specially designed charges at precise points around the system's star, they could trigger a controlled collapse. The resulting gravitational anomaly would create a localized black hole, trapping the Devourer fleet in an inescapable prison while the human vessels escaped using experimental jump drives. The catch was that positioning the charges required flying directly into the star's corona, a mission that was essentially suicide. The volunteers knew they wouldn't be coming back. Captain Wan Hene approached the Admiral's command station, her uniform crisp, despite the months of continuous combat. Her eyes held the calm acceptance of someone who had already made peace with. Death, Admiral. The Stellar Strike Squadron is ready for deployment, she reported. We've calculated the optimal placement points. Charges will detonate in sequence, creating a cascading collapse that should contain the entire Devourer fleet. Kim studied her face, seeing the determination of someone who understood the weight of history on her shoulders. Captain, you understand this is a one-way mission. Corona temperatures will destroy your ships long before you can escape. Sir, with respect, we all understood the risks when we volunteered for this mission, one replied firmly. Didn't send us out here to come home as heroes. We came to end a threat that has terrorized innocent people for millennia. If our sacrifice saves countless worlds, then it's a price worth paying. The Admiral clasped her shoulder, a gesture that conveyed more than words ever could. It has been an honor serving with you, Captain. Earth will remember. As one squadron prepared for their final mission, the main Devourer fleet began advancing. The bioships moved like a living tide, their bioluminescent patterns creating hypnotic displays that had mesmerized countless civilizations before their destruction. But this time, they faced an enemy that had learned to resist their psychological warfare. All units, this is Soul's might, Kim broadcast to the entire human fleet. The enemy expects us to fight a conventional battle. They're gathering their forces for what they believe will be our final stand. They're right about it being final, just not in the way they expect. The human fleet began what appeared to be a desperate defensive formation, drawing the Devourer forces exactly where Kim wanted them. The bioships took the bait, surrounding the human vessels in preparation for a feeding frenzy that would end the threat to their species forever. Stellar Strike Squadron, you are cleared for your final approach, Kim commanded. One's 47 ships broke formation and accelerated directly toward the system's star. The volunteers had stripped their vessels of everything non-essential, replacing defensive systems with additional shielding and the massive stellar collapse charges that would seal the Devourer's fate. This is Captain Wan Hin, Stellar Strike Squadron leader. Her voice came over the fleet communications as her ships entered the star's outer atmosphere. For Earth, for all innocent worlds, and for everyone who believes that freedom is worth any sacrifice, it has been an honor serving alongside the finest warriors humanity has ever produced. The temperature readings on her ship climbed beyond survivable levels as they penetrated deeper into the star's corona. Her hull began to glow white-hot, and systems failed, one by one. But her mission remained clear: place the charges at the calculated positions and trigger the stellar collapse. Charges deployed, came reports from squadron members as their ships were consumed by stellar fire. Detonation sequence initiated. Long live Earth. The star began to collapse exactly as the human scientists had calculated. The nuclear fusion processes that had burned for billions of years suddenly became unstable, creating a chain reaction that compressed the stellar core beyond its ability to support itself What happened next defied the normal laws of stellar physics. Instead of exploding as a supernova, the star collapsed inward, its massive gravity well becoming so intense that not even light could escape. A black hole formed in a matter of minutes, its event horizon expanding to encompass the inner system. The Devourer bioships found themselves caught in an inescapable gravitational prison. Their organic hulls, designed to survive in the vacuum of space, were no match for tidal forces that could tear apart planets. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia were pulled inexorably toward the event horizon, their bioluminescent patterns flickering and dying as they crossed the point of no return. "Jump drives online," reported Navigation Officer Lieutenant Kim Soo-jin from her station. "All surviving vessels report ready for emergency jump." "Execute jump," Kim ordered. "Get us out of here." Human fleet vanished into hyperspace just as the gravitational effects reached their position. They had cut their escape incredibly close, but the calculations held. Humanity had achieved the impossible. They had eliminated the Devourer threat forever. As the surviving human vessels regrouped in deep space, communications began flooding in from across the galaxy. The Council offered humanity full membership, with unprecedented privileges. The hegemony requested military alliance treaties. Dozens of species that had never acknowledged Earth's existence suddenly wanted to establish diplomatic relations. Admiral Kim stood before the main communications array as messages poured in from every corner of known space. When he finally spoke, his words were broadcast to every civilization in the galaxy. "People of the stars," he began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had just saved countless worlds. "Earth does not seek conquest or dominion over others. We did not come to claim territory or demand tribute. We came because innocent people called for help, and humans answer such calls." He paused, letting his words reach every corner of the galaxy before continuing. "But let this serve as notice to any who would threaten peaceful civilizations in the future. Earth remembers its friends, and we never forget our enemies. We have proven that even the most ancient evil can be defeated when good people stand together." Response was unprecedented. Species that had never cooperated began working together, inspired by humanity's example. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from individual power, but from the willingness to sacrifice everything for others. As the human fleet began its long journey home, every species in the galaxy understood that the balance of power had permanently shifted. Humanity had claimed its place among the stars not through conquest or intimidation, but through an act of selfless valor that would be remembered for countless generations. The primitive species from the backwater Sol system had become the galaxy's protectors, and the universe was forever changed by their courage. The end.